Well, we've seen like LSAs were a gift from Google. And then all of a sudden they got more and more expensive, more and more competitive, got rid of the challenges. And all of a sudden it's no longer a free lunch. And if you're not careful, you can be upside down.
Sharp strategies, sweet success.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome. This is Tiffany Swedensky, and you're listening to Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success. Today, I am here with Seth Price of Price Benowitz and Blue Shark Digital. I've been marketing for law firms in Northern Virginia for 10 years, so I'm very aware of Price Benowitz and the kind of chokehold they have on the local SEO space. They're really a force to be reckoned with, and if you're a law firm competing up here in Northern Virginia, it's kind of hard to get around them. They'll take all the top spots from you. And Blue Shark Digital, I've worked with several times over the years, working with them right now with one of my fractional CMO clients. I love Nalini. She was on this podcast a couple weeks ago and just part of their company and just a great resource of information. So very pleased to have Seth come on the podcast today, and I'll let him finish out his introduction.
Well, look, I have to follow that. I don't know. That was quite humbling, but thank you so much for the kind words. The last 20 years building Price Benowitz and the last 10 years building Blue Shark, has been just awesome. And, to have colleagues in the community across the river. For those that don't know the local geography, there's different sides of the Potomac. And while, as the crow flies on Waze, it may be, 12 miles. You would think you would need a passport to visit said friend. So it's good to see you in this virtual space.
That is really funny because I come from the Midwest, and out there, drive time is exactly how long it takes to drive from one place to another. But out here, it's completely different calculus. Like you have to pad it with traffic, and that adds a lot. Well, so I guess one of the first questions I want to ask you, and I'm asking everyone this in the tech space because it's a hot topic, but how has marketing changed in the last 5 years? And you have two ways you can answer. You could talk about how it's changed for the law firm, and then you can talk about how it's changed for the SEO company.
Well, look, our end users here, for the most part, law firms, so talk there. And I think what we've seen, and Nalini and I have spoken around the country on this, is that local search has been where it's at for most of your clients. If you are a regional player, single event PI, criminal, family, trust and estates, B2C player, then at the end of the day, local search has been the place where people are going to make their buying decisions. And while over the last months and year or so, we've seen AI, scramble things up quite a bit and take away certain search traffic, local search has been the great equalizer where we're able to find people and connect with them in a meaningful way.
And local search is just super, super important. And I spent a lot of time talking to the attorneys about it because it's not just like how your website is doing, it's how your business listing is doing. And that's just, in my view, just way more impactful than like a blog on your website.
Both are needed. Blogs are great. I have no problem with blogs, but a lot of the stuff on blogs is interesting, and interesting doesn't make money. It's funny. My law partner, Dave Benowitz, and I, we've over the last 20 years, and I've known him since 1987, you probably weren't even alive yet. We take a lot of different meetings. People want to pitch us some idea, business idea, this or that. And we leave a meeting saying that's interesting. I found that to be code word for it doesn't make money. And so what I want to do is find out what makes you money? What are monetizable cases? And so, look, blogs can be, long tail search is great, and there's nothing wrong with it. I know people have built their entire careers on nothing but blogs. That said, the intersection of the buying opportunity, and I think Google has doubled down on it. The second half of my opening answer was that while AI has dropped search traffic, we have not seen our clients, at Blue Shark at least, lose revenue. The cases are still fine, if not up, and that everything is, for the moment, look, AI is going to continue to mess with the establishment, but as of now, we're seeing a drop in answers to questions, whereas before it might be a rich snippet or a blog post. Now there's an AI answer provided by Gemini, and if you do ChatGPT. That said, when somebody wants to buy, that intersection that started with, let's say, a Google Plus back in the day, and is sort of, that may have died, but they have doubled down on the Google Business Profile, that intersection, and they are continuously adding to that. That's, what I'm so excited about. They're adding more and more user generated content. There are now AI perceptions of your firm placed in there for good or for bad. Reviews have taken on even more of an importance. And so I think Google sees, okay, AI is here and it's going to be giving us answers differently. But if we have a proprietary interface that people trust when it comes to buy, we'll go to Amazon. How valuable is the fact that something has a high or low star rating? How many reviews are there? We see those as touch points. I think that's one of the reasons they'd focus so much on cleaning up the review area, because it is a competitive advantage for Google over everybody else.
And I don't know if this is new, but recently I started seeing a little icon that says reviews not verified by Google. And Google seems like it's changed a ton with like its guidance about reviews. And I believe it was just earlier this year, they said it was pretty much, if you suspect you've gotten a fake review, it's up to you to report it, the business owner.
It's funny because to me, this is analogous to what we saw about 10, 15 years ago when it came to spammy links. When I started, you could use links from the Philippines, anchor text, all sorts of nonsense. And and that it made you money. And Google said, hey, don't do it. And people ignored it and they built out those links. And one day they woke up with manual action penalties. We are already seeing Google labeling profiles with the nomenclature saying, don't trust the reviews here. So I think Google, and I think I saw this pretty clearly, that quote unquote glitch, at the beginning of the year, end of last year, where there was supposedly an error and people's review count disappeared, changed, and certain reviews disappeared. What I saw was, okay, review count, who cares? They're going to count it right. But what was clear is that they identified dubious reviews. And while they did come back, when you saw the ones that actually disappeared, not just review count, for the most part, and the ones that I couldn't prove, maybe were just beyond my understanding, when I spoke to people who were friends or clients, and I saw the reviews that disappeared, one of my co-hosts for my podcast, Law Firm Blueprint, he had been in a mastermind. Everybody reviewed from the same IP address. Those disappeared. Yes, they came back, but it's Google's way of saying, hey guys, we know that was BS. And so I think they're going to be just like they were with the reviews. There was a point where first they penalized you, and then there was a period of time when you could identify what links you want to disavow. It wouldn't surprise me at some point if you were supposed to disavow nonsensical reviews. And look, I'd like to disavow a lot of 1-stars, but put that aside, even there are nonsensical 5-stars. I've had a 5-star reviews that were written that were gobbledygook. That was clearly not anybody. It was some random player doing things. So I think that if Google can keep a level of integrity, which has not been their primary focus, and we've seen in different areas, for instance, in the Google Business Profile, there was a period where spam worked. And you would see all these Russian bots opening up law firms for every micro topic, fuck here, injury lawyer. And it was it had 1 or 2 reviews, and it didn't even have a website. It was taking up real estate. It was muddying. It was pollution. And that Google cleaned that up. I have a feeling that they're going to do the same thing here. And there's going to be some pain for people that have been aggressive. I counsel people to be aggressive with the reviews in the sense that you need them, but not to go over the line into fraud. And I'd rather see over time, not so much aggressiveness that you're going to be labeled as somebody who has non-trustworthy reviews, but understanding. I give this analogy. We'll take one of the hot restaurants in DC, Joe's Stonecraft, Joe's Steak and Seafood downtown DC. If you and I walked in there with a party of 8 on Saturday night at 7 o'clock and said, we want a table, and they're like, where's your reservation? We don't have one. They're like, sorry, we're fully committed. We could leave a bad review for that experience. Should we be able? We haven't tasted their food. We've never seen their service. We've never made it through past the hostess or host, but there we are. And so I think that lawyers need to understand you're going to get dinged there and what's good for the goose. So to me, making sure that you are getting a breadth of touch points legitimately beyond just a happy client that finished the entire case happy and paid you in full. And, I hope you get those too. But to me, if you're able to paint a picture of all the different facets within the Google guidelines, great. Just don't go start getting overseas bots to leave your reviews, because Google knows what those are. And if they don't, they will at some point, and they're sitting there as your history, and you don't want that.
You touched on so many good things there. There's a law firm in a metropolitan area where I compete with. I compete with this firm. And over the weekend, they went from 1,600 reviews to 600. And when I saw that happen, I was like, I just know those law firm, those owners are panicking and everyone's trying to figure out what happened. How do we get them back?
Or
And
not, or they really, there's a pretty good chance, if that many removed, that Google knows something. Like, and it's not rocket science. I mean, they see stuff we can't. I had a friend at another law firm do me a favor and had a bunch of his people review me within a short period of time, like, over the course of a week or so. Google says, oh, this one IP address reviewing your firm in mass. It's very, when you look at it from up here, it's very clear when nonsense is happening. So I think that this is the beginning. I've been saying this since the glitch. Google is onto it. Be aggressive, but go over the line at your peril.
well, and this particular law firm has a big ethics complaint against them. And so they're making some news in their area. I bet you that has something to do with it as well. I really like what you say about like all experiences are important. The 1-star reviews are important, the 2-star reviews are important because it's not just the reviews itself, it's how people or how the business owner responds to them. And just earlier today, I was looking through my phone and somebody left a 1-star review for a restaurant and they said it was terrible service. Well, it turns out this restaurant had their cashier had a medical crisis and was in an ambulance when this person showed up expecting to pick up their order. And so the business owner explained, like, the person taking your order had a crisis. We offered to help, and you were just left. And that 1-star review just on its face might seem terrible, but if you read the owner's response and you read what they say, like a smart consumer is going to see through that.
No, and look, it's more than see through it. It's valuable context. I mean, look, when you use a TripAdvisor and you're booking, or a Google and you're booking a hotel, I will often look at the 1-stars. Is the 1-star because somebody had a prepaid reservation and couldn't get a refund, or is it because there was bed bugs and they, where the room was terrible? And I want to know where on that continuum we're dealing with. And now, I don't know about you, but I also, when I see stuff at the other end, maybe I'm not the average consumer, but I'll see stuff, I'm like, that sounds like a former disgruntled employee. And I see it both ways. I still remember one of the great things about large number of reviews, it's harder to game it. And I remember early on, before I was playing the hotel loyalty game, I took my wife to South Beach and we stayed at a bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfast. And it was okay, but it was like a 4.8 on Google. And so with a limited number of reviews, you can really focus on getting a number up. Whereas if something is a major hotel chain with thousands, they can still ask for reviews and solicit them and try to get the good ones. Great, but it's harder to game it. And so my favorite review story was I was in Vegas, and my buddies left for the weekend. One friend was left, and we wanted to go for Korean barbecue. So I Yelped it. And I found it was unbelievable reviews for this Korean barbecue place. And we went, and the meal was fine. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible, but like, you were seeing reviews like it was one of the best restaurants in Vegas. And then dessert came, and they're like, oh, there was a little sign, if you review us and you show the waiter, not say 5-star, if you review us, then you will get free dessert. I'm like, I like free dessert. So, and who's going to have the gumption to show the waiter a non-5-star review to their face? So again, it violates their terms of service, but it just shows you positively versus how many people have had a disgruntled employee leave. And the good thing is, generally, when they do too much of it, the worst thing is if somebody disgruntled leaves, just drops a little thing. But if somebody leaves a ton, then Google and Yelp and everybody else can see that there's a pattern and remove it. But it's scary stuff as a business owner. You're out there in glass houses.
So let me ask you this. Are you, for your law firm or either through Blue Shark, are you guys doing Google ads at all? What's your take on Google ads right now?
I love them and I hate them at the same time. When they work, it's amazing. I think that whether it's Google ads or LSAs, the key is to test and to continue to test, and don't test at your peril. For a very long time, when the clicks were less, people were like, just pay for it, see what happens. They are so expensive now, and it doesn't always work. There are markets where you can't do it anymore. I've seen markets like South Florida for criminal, certain areas for PI, where the cost per case, where you're now working for Google, and you got to be really careful. God forbid your intake. Look, another whole topic for another day. Intake has to be there, has to be table stakes. But when you're paying for these clicks, first you need to have intake because you don't want to have a hole in your bucket. But secondly, best practices used to be a monthly check-in. If you're, I'm at the point where I'm spending 6 figures a month on paid search for myself personally for Price Benowitz. When that's the case, I need to know on a weekly basis if there's an issue. And I want to and this is the worst part. I mean, our firm is now scaled. We have 50 plus attorneys, but when you're, if you have an attorney on vacation, maternity leave, paternity leave, whatever it is, if you aren't like, oh, this new person isn't converting the same way the other person was doing, like, you have to be able to turn the stuff up and down quickly, because it does, you have to amortize your results. So having a bad month throws off your numbers for the quarter, which throws off your numbers for the year. So it's buyer beware. It's extremely powerful when it works. God bless, but it better be dialed in, and you better, it used to be that intake, that coordinating intake with your marketing department was a luxury. To now, I see it as table stakes. If you do nothing else from this call, this podcast, and say, we have to have intake communicating with whoever's running your paid search at least on a monthly basis, if not twice a month or more, it is essential to get that feedback loop. Otherwise, you're just blowing money.
So I had a client, or still have them, but earlier this year they asked, hey, Tiffany, I want to increase leads by 100%. That's what we need to hit. And I was like, all right, do my best. Combination of Google ads, bunch of other things. We, within a month, were 40% of the way there. So we increased leads by 40%. Didn't meet the goal, but the thing was, before we hit that, I told him, like, hey, we really need to work on intake, because there are problems in intake. And listening to calls, looking at the numbers, we could tell, but it was a hard problem for him to fix for a number of reasons. And just within like 2 months, 3/4 of this intake team is gone. 1 was fired, 2 were no call, no shows. Still working on replacing that team. And now everything is kind of shut down. And it's just exactly what you said. Like, 1 bad month or 2 bad months has pretty much ruined the quarter. And now we're doing a whole bunch of damage control, because literally increasing the leads didn't solve the problem. It just made it that much worse.
The other thing I would say is, I think you got to be careful about the use of paid search. There are people very aggressive, buddies in California, that made gazillions of dollars, purely paid search, nothing else. They gave up on SEO. But to me, the ROI from SEO and local search, so much higher than anything else. For every dollar, somebody gives us $5,000, $10,000 a month. Like in PI, most main markets we deal with, cases are worth $3,500 a month. If we deliver more than 3 more with SEO, now, then you're in the money. If we deliver 30 cases in a month on a $10,000 investment, that's insane. And so when they say to you, I want to increase my volume, great. But the Google auction, for the most part, again, there are holes in the lot, but less and less. If you get 3 to 1 on your paid search, amazing. Many people, if they're honest, the over under is probably 2.5 to 1. And when you start going 2 to 1 or less, you start working for Google. And so while you may get, whether it's 40% more or whatever percentage you got them, I think that, look, hold a bucket, really bad, right? Because then you're getting nothing. But if you aren't very cognizant of the fact, the margin is going to be very different there. And all of a sudden you're staffing up and creating additional costs to cover that. Now, if you have excess bandwidth, okay, then you're fine, right? Because the margin is less, but you're not increasing your hard costs. But if you start burning people out, or you have to hire more people to cover this, all of a sudden that's a game that gets very, very dangerous with paid search. And what we've seen, like LSAs were a gift from Google. And then all of a sudden they got more and more expensive, more and more competitive, got rid of the challenges. And all of a sudden it's no longer a free lunch. And if you're not careful, you can be upside down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's easy with any of these paid platforms to spend more than you mean to, because they make it like insanely easy to do just that, any Google Ads recommendation is just designed to get you to spend more money. It's not to further your business goals. Facebook's the same way.
Well, in
And
theory, look, and in theory, lawyers are tough because that's why I want the intake so involved. Because when you sell a book on Facebook, you have an e-commerce type thing, you can see very quickly what that closed loop is. I'm always jealous of people that have those closed loops. God bless, right? And that way, when Google makes a recommendation, you have a conversion factor. So putting that data back into Google, very, very important. But knowing that we generally don't have it, and the more you can do to close that loop to be closer to the book being sold on Facebook, the better off you are. But it is not for the faint of heart.
are you guys moving into large language model optimization, or I've also heard it called GAO, generative AI optimization?
Yeah, and the answer is, like, right now we're following it and we love it when our clients get it, and we're pretty good at optimizing for it, but it's a moving target. We don't know where. So SEO is changing. That is where, before it was like for the Google algorithm. That's our lion's share. 90% of the market's there, the search, the local search, everything. But what all you're trying to do is figure out, where is that AI pulling the information from and putting yourselves front and center. I think the frustrating thing is, early on, we're seeing a lot of the paid directories pop back up. How long will that last? Will they get smart enough not to use that? So figuring out how to be there, we're just like you would with a rich snippet. We knew how to get the rich snippets. Now the fit question is, how can we put you front and center? Some of it is an ego play and some of it's real, right? We know how to put those long tail searches and come up for those answers, but is that making you any money? And at the end of the day, I keep coming back to that. Like, do you want me chasing that? Or do you want us to make sure that we're in the 3-pack in 3 different places?
And I mean, Google business, I mean, the listings, they ain't going away anytime soon. And not even Apple, could really unseat Google. I think most people just go to Google, even if they've been referred, even if they've seen your brand before on social media, they're still coming through that channel. And so, they're not going to call you if your listing looks like crap, or if your listing doesn't show up, or it's not filled out, or you ain't got a ton of reviews. And it's just that one channel is just so consumingly important for
Right. So it dropped a little bit below 90. I'll still take it. That's where I want to be. For
Yeah.
the foreseeable future, that's where we are.
Do you guys have anything coming up this year, that like new projects or plans that you're excited about that you want to share?
I think that we're obviously continuously looking at where AI is going and making sure that our clients are found for those cool snippets at the top. I think at the same time, we are thankful that the strategy we've rolled out over the last 5 years plus has continued to pay dividends, that going local, that opening new offices, that focusing on local search is where people in their buying decisions have been, and just keeping an eye as to whether that changes. But right now, we are digging deep because it has worked and continue to pay dividends.
Now, what about and I guess I'm mainly asking about the firm, but are you guys also doing social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn? Well, I know you're personally on LinkedIn.
A great question. I think that law firms, there are 3 stages of law firms doing social. There's check the box, which is where I hate that somebody sells somebody a $3,500 package to put up, National Redhead Day or National Dog Day. Great. There's the middle, where you are using your offline time to build a following, to gain followers, to gain interactions, to start producing videos, whether they be substantive, which I don't really love, or behind the scenes, which I do love. And then there's when you really get creative. And this is something that's almost impossible to outsource. I don't know a single agency that does this at scale really well outside of maybe Hollywood. But the point is that if you are doing social, being authentic, creating short form video, whether you use it for the top platforms you mentioned, put it on YouTube, all awesome. But if you're doing one of the 3 most important things to do when you get in an accident, it's not going to it's checking the box. It's not moving the needle forward. And when you look at people that have really done well, they make it entertaining. They make it personal. They make it nothing about law, whether it's restaurants in your area. It's getting a following. And there are people in different areas. I know people in immigration, that may be an exception. We're talking about substance resonates. much, much higher. People aren't thinking about the injury lawyer until they need one. Whereas with immigration, it's a much longer sale process. You see family law getting some love in that space because people may think about things for a long time before they pull the trigger. But criminal defense, there's no pre-thinking about it. You're ready for a lawyer. Like, you're not going to remember the person you saw. And like, again, God, you want to do TikTok, but the ROI is going to come from that search over it. And I think it's being real about what resources you have and what you love to do. You love to write, blogs can be amazing. But if you love to make video and if you hate to make video, you're not going to be doing these things. So whether it be podcasts, whether it be video podcasts, whatever it is, do what you like, but then match it up to what you need. Because if you're a criminal lawyer and you're doing a podcast, the odds of getting a client from that are so remote. Rather, if you're a B2B player, as this podcast is for, meaning then all of a sudden there's a purpose for it. The guests are adding value, that your audience is gaining value from this. And all of a sudden there are all these different touch points that come together. And I think it's figuring out where you are and how that's coming to be. If you are a B2C player, are your people going to bring you referrals? Are the audience going to be large enough that it would have a meaningful? And often that's not the case. And so figuring out what, going back to my contracts class in law school, what's the call to question? What are you trying to accomplish? And then putting the media that makes the most sense behind it, layered with what do you like?
Personality is so paramount. I did some alliteration on accident there. But yeah, personality is so important to social media. And if you show up without it, you're really not getting views or engagement. And if you're just like one of the people built not to be behind the camera, you don't want to be on camera, you like to just do your work or do whatever and be on with your day, you're not going to love social media. And it's so, so hard. And honestly, I kind of envy the criminal defense attorneys because at least criminal defense is funny. At least you can make a lot of comedic content about criminal defense.
Right, but I would caution that, because do you want those clients?
Yeah, true.
Right? I mean, like, to me, I don't love it. I'd rather have a bunch of guys in ties that are badass, that are perceived in a way that is above the fray. And then I'd rather, rather than invest in a TikTok brand, which again, if you love it, God bless and go do it. But to me, that's one where search is paramount, because when somebody gets arrested, they can't remember anything else. I need help. And they're going directly to Google. That's why I love it. That's why I have 25 criminal lawyers. So, if you're in other areas where, there's a longer sales cycle, yeah, you need to keep people entertained along the way. But there's no along the way with criminal. You have a very short window between getting arrested and needing a lawyer. Let's make sure we're at that intersection. Every ounce of energy should go into that. Whereas, if you want to be the entertaining family lawyer that somebody's like, man, I'm getting divorced at the end of the year when I get my tax refund check or whatever, that, then all of a sudden you have time to bond with somebody, and that extra gloss could go a long way.
And I know what you said is so important, and this isn't what you said, but PI isn't entertaining. The type of content that's going to get you clients and cases isn't the type of content that's going to get engagement on most social media platforms.
The stuff that will is not always the stuff I'm willing to do. I look at, like, Top Dog is getting crazy results. I'm just not willing to go there. So God bless, they can make a buck. And there are people that do certain things on TV that are great and they make a lot of money. The question is, where's your line? What are you comfortable with? And then figuring that out, and then figuring out that intersection of what makes you money with what you're willing to do.
I mean, yeah, Top Dog Law is really, really hitting it off on social media, but look at the comments on their post. And do you want those clients? Probably not.
Well, but I would say that the flip side is, as the old saying was in PR, did they spell your name right? And, and so to me, that is why saying to a lawyer, should you do social media? You're moving into a world where the guys crushing it are very often, they're not talking about the 3 things you need in a will. Like, that's not getting, but it's something, and some of the guys aren't even lawyers anymore. It's full-time production. And if you want to be Hollywood and you want to be law by Mike, it's great. Just understand that this is not like a lawyer doing it on the side. This is a guy whose full-time business is actual production of videos, and you're not going to figure this out on your own with an iPhone.
That's such an important, I want to dive more into there, but we are coming up on time. So, well, I guess I'll ask my last question. What, was there anything that we didn't talk about that you're hoping to go over or wanted to talk about some more?
No, I mean, look, to me, I think this world that we talked about is like, we went from the most important out. We could continue talking for hours, but I would say if anybody takes anything from this, it's focus on what is making the phone ring with monetizable clients. And no, social, great. But is that going to get you an ROI, or is that just checking a box? And then doubling down on the stuff that actually makes money versus stuff that you think you should be doing.
Well, Seth, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. I did actually get excited when I saw that you accepted the invitation. So I, again, really appreciate it. And thanks for everybody for listening. Seth, where do you want people to go find you?
And, as you know, I'm pretty easy to find online, whether it's LinkedIn, which I've been spending a bunch of time on lately, Seth J. Price, or Facebook, because I'm old, so not Instagram. You probably won't get me, but somebody else from the company. But Facebook, LinkedIn, email, Seth at Blue Shark Digital or Seth at Price Benowitz. Always love to engage. And if you got a question, try to stop me. I'd love it. And if I can add value to your firm, love to do so.
Well, thanks so much again, everyone, and we'll see everyone next time.